Thanks so much for attending our tech demo. This video will provide a brief introduction to the Machine Learning for Peace project and our interactive online tools. These tools are designed to put fine-grained data and forecasts of future civic space events into the hands of practitioners and policymakers working to defend democracy. Machine Learning for Peace is a collaborative project led by researchers at DevLab at Duke University and the Inspires Consortium, a USAID-funded effort to integrate cutting-edge research and programming to bolster civil society around the world. This demo will focus on demonstrating how practitioners can use the project's interactive tools. However, you can find much more information about the technical details of our work and the research that we are producing on our website. The URL is mlp.trinity.duke.edu. We hope you find this introduction informative, and we look forward to engaging with you in the discussion thread and live chat channel. As the last 2 years have made clear, democratic backsliding often happens abruptly, as governments seize on crises as opportunities to restrict fundamental rights or expand executive authority. Given the pace and diversity of events that characterize democratic backsliding, policymakers and practitioners require high-frequency data that identifies these changes quickly. However, existing democracy data measures these changes annually, limiting their ability to identify sequences of events that predict changes that will occur over weeks or months rather than years or decades. We use cutting-edge research methods to accelerate the provision of data to practitioners and policymakers who need to make timely, evidence-based decisions to counter attacks on democracy. We overcome the limitations of existing data by continuously scraping online news published by international, regional, and domestic news sources, using recent advances in natural language processing to identify reporting on civic space events, and using this information to generate accurate monthly forecasts on trends in civic space. So far, Machine Learning for Peace has scraped and processed more than 68 million news stories from more than 100 online news sources in more than 20 different languages. Our new website, launched in January 2022, makes this information publicly available for the first time. On the technical details and research page, you can read about the technology involved, check out our ongoing research, and get details about the types of events that we track. If you navigate to the Dimensions of Civic Space page, you can see definitions of all these event types. We are currently collecting data for 19 different types of events related to civic space, including things like citizen protests, government censorship, and legal changes. In the next few weeks, we will release data on 2 new events, corruption and civic activism. If you navigate to the data dashboard page, you can interact with the data for more than 30 countries, and new countries are being added on a regular basis. Using the drop-down menu near the top, users can view and compare data across different events in different countries. For all of the event types that we track, our plots report the share of all articles published in the country's media that were dedicated to reporting on each event type on a month-by-month basis. In other words, months with higher values indicated there was more reporting on that event relative to the level of reporting on all other topics. Here, we are looking at events in Serbia, focusing on the volume of reporting on protests, election law changes, and state of emergency declarations. As you can see, this figure captures 4 waves of highly impactful protests, including 2 important waves of protests in the last 2 years. Zooming in, we can also see that our state of emergency variable captures 3 waves of COVID restrictions implemented by the Serbian government and several important changes in election laws in advance of the last 2 elections. If you navigate to our forecast page, you can view our forecast for a variety of events. In order to predict future trends in civic space, DevLab's models identify the patterns in our historical data that were associated with past changes. We then combine knowledge of these historical patterns with data on what is happening right now to predict what is likely in the future months. Using the menu on the left, users can select the country and type of event that they are interested in and look at a series of figures that visualize recent trends and our expectations for future months. The page provides forecasts for 12 different types of events, as well as a civic space index variable that summarizes the amount of activity across many related event types. The first plot allows users to interact with historical data for the event type that they have selected. Here, we are looking at forecasts for protests in Serbia, and we can see that there were large protests in November and December of last year. The second figure presents our forecasts. The gray bars convey the prevalence of that event in the country's media up through the most recent months we have data for. The blue bars present our expectations of how prevalent this event will be in the next 7 months into the future. Along with these estimates, we provide 2 measures of how accurate our models have predicted past changes. The blue shading of the bars indicates an ability of our models to explain more variation month to month, with brighter shades of blue indicating better performance and darker shades of blue into black indicating worse performance. Alternatively, the black vertical bars indicate the volatility of our estimates, showing how our model's predictions change when we use different subsets of our data. As you can see, we expect levels of protest to increase slightly in June and July. The color in these bars indicates the performance of the model is relatively high, and the black bars indicate that although our predictions have some volatility, they produce clear expectations that certain months will be significantly higher or lower than others, regardless of the model being used. The third plot shows the current events and conditions that predict future changes. The strength of each variable's relationship with future changes is captured by the red to green shaded cells to the right of each variable. As the values trend towards red, that means increases in the variable are associated with larger increases in the variable being predicted, and as the values trend towards green, increases in the variable imply larger decreases in the variable being predicted. An empty cell indicates there is no discernible relationship. For protest, we see that elevated levels of protest in the current month are associated with higher levels of protest over the next 3 months, and higher levels of inflation and transportation costs now is associated with more protest activity 2 to 7 months into the future. Thanks again for attending this demo of the Machine Learning for Peace Project website. With civic space shifting rapidly around the world, we believe that faster and more potent technological interventions like this one will be critical for bolstering local civil societies. We hope that our work can help practitioners understand more about recent trends in specific countries, explore the patterns that exist between different types of events, and plan for the future. We encourage you to visit the project website to interact with these data yourself, watch some of our other talks, or learn more about how our data is constructed and the research we are doing. In addition to our work tracking and forecasting civic space events, you can also interact with our data tracking Russian and Chinese influence around the world and see our tools that use Twitter data to track events related to the conflict in Ukraine in near real time. These projects are all part of DELA's broader goal to ensure that data, evidence, and insights generated through our research can be applied directly to policy and programming. If you have ideas or feedback on how we can make this information more useful to you or to the broader development community, we would love to hear about your thoughts in the